Fantastic Four. We both agree it's separate from our feelings on the comics in general.
Yeah, there's nothing fantastic about the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, that it's a property out of time, and it's nearly impossible to keep it within the spirit of what it was and to make a watchable thing. Fantastic Four. They've tried to reboot it once. They had a great cast. They had a theoretically okay idea, and they shat the bed. The first two Fantastic Four movies are terrible.
And let's not forget the failed Roger Corman Fantastic Four that stands as one of the worst movies of all time, aside from being a superhero film. Even the Fantastic Four cartoon was bad. All right, so first things first in fixing the Fantastic Four. Out the gate, everybody wants to skew young when they're casting. They want to do young, hip, cool, fresh Fantastic Four. I say absolutely not. Do mature, older, thoughtful Fantastic Four. Cast actors who are in their 40s entirely, with the exception maybe of having a slightly younger Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
And casting a teenage to young 20s Franklin Richards.
Yeah, already get into that. Okay, so that's the first step.
Yes, right off the ground, you get established actors who would never otherwise be in superhero movies. You start picking actors who are known for their dramatic roles, and you use them instead, and you make a thinking superhero film that is not simply just a bunch of action scenes tied together by a loose plot. You actually make it so that the characters are thinking their way through problems, and that it's a bigger problem than simply going, oh, we've got to fight this army of mole people because the villain is Mole Man, because the Fantastic Four should have never outlasted the Golden Age.
Yeah, okay. So we got Fantastic Four. Your concepts skew a little older, be a bit more of a thought piece of a film. Couple quick questions for you.
Yeah.
Number one, Reed and Sue. Married, divorced, struggling?
Married, but maybe married, but in that midlife period where now that Franklin is grown, like maybe college age, we're looking at for Franklin, and is independent, and maybe we have Valeria as well, Franklin and Valeria Richards, and they're both a little bit older, and they're not, and they're starting to get to where they might be empty nesting. They're having a crisis of figuring out who they are in their marriage outside of superheroes and parents.
Yeah, okay.
And you don't necessarily make it so that they have a bad relationship. Instead, the romantic angle on that is not a will they, won't they thing, or a, like, how do we play this romance? It's you do it as a rediscovery of who they are as a couple.
Yeah.
Where they're rediscovering each other after all these years, and you kind of put a twist on it, and you can make that sexy. Like there's something you can make sexy about that.
All right. Big ones here. Who do you cast?
Okay, so out the gate, like I said, you want to cast established actors in these roles. You want people in their 40s, maybe even 50s. I looked at Sue Storm and I was like, who do you cast in that role, because it's going to make a huge difference, and you need Sue to be the heart of the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, of course.
You have to absolutely make sure that she doesn't just serve as the heart of the Fantastic Four because she's the matron, the mother figure to this tribe of lost boys, because that's bullshit. They're adults. No, you more need to make it serve that Reed is the nominal leader of the Fantastic Four, in the sense that he's the scientist who got it all going, but maybe the sergeant, the battle commander, is Sue Storm. She's the think on your feet, head on her shoulders character. So who do you need to pull that off, where you could do sexy, you can do intelligent, funny, believable, and I say just jump straight to Toni Collette.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
It's
a great Sue,
and you let her take the lead. Where, like, literally, it's like, okay, if you had to name the protagonist of the film, you would say it's Sue Storm.
I like that. Who's Reed against Toni Collette?
Okay,
Who got the chops against Toni Collette?
So for that. For Reed, you have to play the fact that Reed is kind of a distant man. that he is obsessed with his work, with science, with the greater problems of the world. And so you need someone who's a bit diffident, but it can't be someone who's so diffident that he's inaccessible. You just make it so that part of his flaw is that he knows he's bad at human relationships and he feels bad about it, but you play it up as an awkwardness, not as an aloofness.
Yeah.
And so who you want in that sort of role, the sort of diffident, socially awkward, but still accessible, intelligent male lead, you look at a Colin Firth, a man who is aging distinguishedly.
Yeah.
And you play it up like that to where he is less the emotionally cold and dead Reed Richards that we all identify from the comics, and more of a I never really did get the grasp of dealing with people nerd. And
Colin Firth's already got the chops for action, as we've seen in Kingsman.
Right.
I don't really care so much about him in the form of a human, but who's the Thing?
Okay, so the thing about the Thing is that he is, despite being in his monstrous form, the most human of the Fantastic Four, in that his conflicts are all these internal, like, how do I fit in society, being the person that I am. What am I? Am I a monster or am I a man? Character. So obviously the thing needs to be a big dude who can pull off drama with a minimum of exposure, because actors act with their faces. So we got to get good body language in a suit. We've got to get good vocal delivery with effects. We've got to get good expressions through what is likely going to be mocap. This is difficult. Like, we are literally at this point talking about, okay, he has to be as good as Josh Brolin was as Thanos.
Yeah, right.
And he has to be that level of good and that level of believable, but he also has to serve as being funny and more human than Thanos. And that is a rough patch. That's a pickle.
Yeah.
I think you need to go, for Ben Grimm, you need to go with an actor of the caliber of a David Morse.
I think what works for David Morse, especially because we're going to be living with his voice a lot, is that David Morse actually has a real soft, gentle tone that he can access that adds to the humanity of Ben Grimm. He's a big guy, so he's believable in it. So if he's there in a mocap suit, right, most of the cast is going to be like looking like he's already kind of up. You put a cup with like some 6-inch boots on him, and you pretty much got what you need for size.
Sure.
And that empathy and wisdom that can be in his soft voice will be clutch for him in dynamic scenes with Sue Storm and Reed Richards and advising them.
I also can't stress enough how I feel that it would be a disservice to the film if they did not try to go as minimalist as they could with the visual effects on his face. I want to get as much of David Morse's face as I can.
Yeah, again, that's
especially his eyes, because he has great haunted eyes.
Yeah, that's about the effects crew and the director of effects and the director of the film working together to find that balance that they found for Thanos and then deliver it for Ben Grimm. A hard order because he's made of rocks.
Right.
But something that could be done. And it, like you said, if you can get his eyes and figure out how you can translate his expressions through the stone, you will end up with a much better movie.
Just as a note, by the way, I think, just as case may have it, I'm pretty sure David Morse has crystal blue eyes.
He does.
And why is that important? Because he's the ever-loving blue-eyed thing.
Johnny.
Okay, so Johnny is the cool one. He is, of the Fantastic Four, other than having a really stupid name, is the Human Torch. But they all have stupid names. I mean, like, really, Mr. Fantastic, the Thing, the Invisible Woman, or Invisible Girl, as the case may be, and the Human Torch. They're terrible superhero names. But it's the cool power, and he's the cool character. He's the one you get to skew a bit younger with, but he has to believably be of an age to where he can be a sibling. to Sue Storm.
Yeah, so he's still in his 30s.
And the other thing, too, is that while I want a more diverse cast, the skewing so that Sue and Johnny are adoptive siblings already was done, and it was a great idea, but do I want to double down on that?
Yeah.
Because I want to divorce as much as possible from the previous films so that this can be established as these are not the Fantastic Four you've seen at all. The same way they did with Spider-Man when they had to do it for a third time.
Yeah, right.
And they decided, mainly what they decided is we have to go young. He has to be a teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
And they did it brilliantly, but it needs to be that good, and it's hard because this is also a dinosaur property.
Okay, so Johnny, who we casting? Now, remember, you can always, if you're not going to go adoptive, but you do want to kind of diversify the cast, you can always have Sue Storm's parents have one of them die, remarry, and then have...
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking. It's like, okay, her half-brother, Johnny.
Yeah, half-brother, Johnny.
At this point. What I'd really like to see to diversify this cast a bit is I'd like to see an Asian actor get a shot at Johnny Storm.
Yeah.
And I don't want too much to overstay the welcome of any particular actor or overcast anybody. So I'm like looking at that, I'm like, well, who can you cast then? Who's good? Who can you throw into that role believably of an age to be a sibling to Sue Storm? And I was thinking Henry Golding.
Oh, yeah, Henry Golding.
I was thinking Henry Golding from Crazy Rich Asians, and I'll tell you my thinking on this. So, the need in Johnny Storm is that Johnny Storm has to code cool, young, and sexy in a film that we're trying to make cerebral with characters who are not young characters. And I think going with a William Golding gives an air of youth without an air of callow youth. And he definitely straight up codes sexy.
Yeah, he's a good looking man.
And so you roll that and you have your Fantastic Four right there. You have a great grouping of a Fantastic Four. And then just as important to that is you also have your two young cast members in your Franklin and Valeria. You're casting kids. Franklin doesn't have to be a kid because he's going to be college age. He can be an actor in his 20s.
In his 20s playing a little young. What I will allow to do for the audience, and especially knowing who we cast for Sue and Reed, is do some recommendations on who you would cast or who they would cast for the audience, for who you would cast for their kids. Villain, do you go anywhere but Doom? Do you have to do Doom as a Fantastic Four villain and to make it a good movie?
You don't, and I'll tell you why. One of the important things about the Fantastic Four, if we're casting older actors to do this and you want them in the MCU, is you have to right up front answer the question, well, where have they been?
Yeah.
And this is very, very simple for me. Because it comes across in 3 stages for me. Number 1, we already primary cast in the 2 leads 2 British actors.
Yeah.
So why don't we make them a British-based superhero team? We take it out of New York. We don't do New York Baxter Building. We make them a team based in Britain. And they're obviously not all British. But we make them a team based out of Britain, and we make it so that their establishment as adventurer types was in Europe. And so that's why, first off, we didn't get all of this constant Fantastic Four as lore in the background. Secondly, when we have the event that triggers their powers, we take them out of this continuity entirely. So that the Fantastic Four have been essentially living in an alternate reality, a multiverse in the multiverse outside of this one, having their space adventures and their multiverse adventures in a world that is not this one. So of course we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And they come back, and so these are British celebrities who come back with superpowers, but they've been out of the world for like 20 years, and they come back with 2 kids who've never even been in this reality.
Yeah.
And then this also plays really well to to their villains. So that's the third part of this. Is like, well, then what do? Well, you go straight for Galactus.
You just go straight.
You just go straight for Galactus, and you play Galactus Classic.
So Patrick
Warburton in the costume with that big fucking helmet, wearing the purple tuning fork on his head, with an appetite for destruction. And
I love Patrick Warburton Galactus.
So this is the key. It's like you go straight for Galactus, so you have your Silver Surfer role, and neither of the casting for that. I mean, obviously we want to do Patrick Warburton, but the casting for Galactus and Silver Surfer is unimportant.
It really isn't, because the movie's mostly centered around the Fantastic Four.
Right, precisely. These are going to be ancillary characters, and you don't even do the thing. You don't even do the thing that Rise of the Silver Surfer did, which is, by the way, a terrible name for that film because it's not accurate to the film at all.
Yeah.
You just let the Silver Surfer be Galactus' herald for the whole damn thing and have him be a bad guy.
Yeah.
The whole thing. No turn at all.
Yeah, because you don't need it, A, in the first movie he appears in, and B, it makes it a very easy person to fight for the Fantastic Four through the whole film.
Right. And you also make it so that because the resolution of the film is not going to be them having a punch bout with Galactus, because that's stupid, that the turn for the Silver Surfer in being an ally instead of an enemy is based around the resolution of the film, not a second act turn.
Yeah. And
so there you go. And I say also for the sake of looking at the characters we have, I'm going to throw out suggested casting for the Richards children, but we obviously want to hear from the audience. The audience is time to chew on it now, and they're going to give us what they think. But my thinking is this: first off, this is your shot to get Timothée Chalamet into the Marvel universe as Franklin Richards.
Yes.
You just bring him right in, and the great thing about him is, like, he's beautiful. That's a gorgeous, gorgeous young man.
Yeah.
But he's not, like, ripped or anything. You're not gonna get the, like, big flex, big pecs hero out of him for another 8 years.
Yeah.
He will not be old enough to bulk up. So you make him a Franklin Richards, who is a very young, very powerful individual on his own, who doesn't need to be big and strong to be important and be imposing. Mm-hmm. And so you bring that in, and then you have the entire draw of casting a Timothée Chalamet in the role.
Yeah.
For Valeria, I think we skew right back into, well, how do we diversify this cast a bit? And we just go ahead and say that while Valeria is Reed and Sue's daughter, she's the daughter of a Reed and Sue from a different dimension who don't exist anymore. And we maybe go and cast an actress at least of this caliber, but she was, who I was thinking of is from the cast of Us, Shadiah Wright Joseph.
Yeah, she, apparently she did young Nala's voice in The Lion King too.
Oh, so, well, okay, I get that too.
And so, yeah, I definitely agree. I think that this is a better concept for the Fantastic Four, because we don't want to deal with the wholesomeness or the overwrought struggle, like basic struggle in Reed and Sue's marriage. It's been done and it doesn't work. This allows it to be a positive story and about growth, but about also a little fish out of water, and it lets it really get there.
The other thing too is, in order to bring it into the greater Marvel universe as it stands, and get it worked into the mythology that needs a bit of broadening, and to rely on a technique that they already used in Captain Marvel, you have your early act villains who make the second act transition. You have them be Skrulls, but the way in which you execute on that, and also a way to diversify the cast in a way that almost no other films ever frickin' do, unless this is a thing that they're actually about, is that you cast as your Skrulls entirely Native American or mestizo Latinx actors and actresses, and you have them be Skrulls who have lived on Earth for generations, for a couple thousand years, and have done so under the guise in the Americas as an American Indian tribal group. And so you have that whole thing too, because the Skrulls, viewing them as imposters and as aliens, you can bring this up to do a semi-referential political point of view of the Skrulls being like, well, to you view us as aliens, but we've been here in this country and on this planet longer than you have.
Yeah.
This is our home as much as it's yours, if not more. You've been skipping through the space and the multiverse for the past 20 years. Our people are from here.
Yeah.
And the Skrulls are your loop in to who is Galactus, where has he come from, what has he done, and what is he? Because their ancestors came here escaping him.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a gift.
And in that way, then you convert them like you did in Captain Marvel to where they're not the bad guys. They're the good guys.
Yeah, they're refugees.
Yeah, they're refugees. They're the good guys. They're native to the planet, and they're on your side. And they're not looking to pick a fight. They just want to exist like anyone else wants to exist. And then it's part of the greater Marvel mythos. And it brings Galactus into the story in a believable, relatable way where you do not have to beat people over the head with it. It's like, no, he destroyed our planet. This is terrifying for us. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, you make them relevant. You add some politics into the game that resonates with audiences. You have characters who are non-standard for superhero films, who are older, who would never necessarily get cast in these sorts of roles.
Yep. And
you have a thinkier story. And I think all of that combines to make a Fantastic Four film that's not going to automatically feel dorky and dated. It shouldn't be campy or hokey in any way. It should feel like a different kind of superhero film.
Yep. Okay. Well, that is how you fix the Fantastic Four. Again, like, subscribe on YouTube if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify or through some other method or direct on the website. Feel free to sign up for notifications there. And we'll be fixing more comic book movies in the future.